Namaste. I think it must be time to go live on another bicycle live stream. I'm up at Emerald Lakes. I've ridden 32 kilometres and I'm about to start riding back home. Look at that blue sky behind me, will you? Isn't that magnificent? It's so still here. The lakes are just perfectly calm, and it's an amazing reflection of the buildings, and very, very peaceful, just the way I like it. So this morning's topic on Sunday, October the 11th, is understanding love addiction. What is love addiction, and why does it happen, and how can we understand it and the effects that it has on us, and the disastrous results, and what can we do about it? And these are all good questions. If I come up with a good answer, I'll let you know. But let's just have a look at what it is. There's many different ways of describing love addiction, but one of the ways of understanding it is that it is its intensity mistaken for intimacy. So if you can think of a situation where maybe you've been attracted to someone and you've connected with that person, and there's been like this amazing, the honeymoon effect, this amazing rush, this amazing, overwhelming sort of need to be with them all the time, an extreme intensity. It's out of balance. And of course, initially this tends to happen in a lot of situations where we connect with someone, but when it is to the extent that it's overwhelming, then it's not a healthy connection, and may not be, but it may be a sign of a love addiction. But let's go back to, what I noticed years ago with some people that would have this in hurry bowl angel. Namaste. What I noticed years ago with some people was they had this cycle, this pattern they would go through, which is best described as a love addiction, where they had this need to sort of have this intense high, this intense connection, and then it can only last a small amount of time. The honeymoon effect can only last about a year, and the person then has to that person loses interest in their connection, and then starts looking outwards to recreate that high, that endorphin, serotonin hit. This is a component of love addiction, and I'm going to explain why that becomes so strong in a lot of us, and what we can do about it, what it's a sign of, and what we can do about it. Now, some of the understandings about love addiction is that it can actually be shielding us from painful feelings. In other words, rather than find the courage to sit with painful emotions, we would rather become overwhelmed in a connection with someone. That is far more pleasing, even if our logical self knows that it's temporary and that it cannot, it hasn't worked in the past, and it's not likely, based on our track record, to work again. However, that hit, just like the hit a drug addict gets, is enough to attract us into a repeated cycle of getting connected to people who are not the best choices, not healthy for us. And we ourselves are not living in a healthy connection. We're not treating ourselves in a healthy way, setting boundaries. We're not maintaining contact with our friends and our family. We're very much showing the signs of an addiction to love. And we love it. We love love addiction. People love it. In the same way that somebody says, oh, I love chocolate, or I love cocaine. Okay, sorry, I went there. But, it's that sort of thing. We love it. We need the next hit. And in that situation, we actually, rather than face our own painful feelings, we actually expect the other person, this connection with the other person, to solve our problems. And for a little while, initially, it seems like that's the case. You know, you only have to look on social media, not very long, in, you know, Facebook and Instacrap, and have a look at some of the posts, especially from people that you see having repeated short-term relationships. And then you'll see this pattern, you'll see this cycle of needing to get, they find someone, they need to get the hit. There's a whole, it's almost like a textbook, sort of pattern that it follows. You know, you meet someone and it's like, oh wow, and this is the one, and then the next thing you see on their social media that they're posting photos of them, you know, here, there and everywhere. Usually fairly, and this is the one I laugh at, usually within a short space of time, they're off on a holiday somewhere. And I just go, oh, here we go. Oh boy, oh, they installed some bumps on this road, wow. And usually, you know, if it lasts long enough, they'll go on a few holidays in a short space of time. And then, not long afterwards, the inevitable happens. And then in order to not have to face what the person has been facing, what the person has been avoiding, in order to not face what the person has been avoiding and has been using the love addiction to avoid, they then have to attach themselves to someone else to get that high again, to get that honeymoon effect again. And it's not a great way to live. It creates, you burn a lot of bridges that way. We create a lot of disappointed people, including ourselves. So looking at why love addiction forms is actually interesting, because I've done some research on it, and it's actually interesting that it stems from, or can stem from, a history of abandonment. Now, when we say abandonment, or when I say abandonment, it doesn't have to be actual abandonment. It's we felt that we were abandoned. It's all about how we felt. It's what we perceived to be happening. We weren't necessarily abandoned, physically or emotionally, but for some reason, which, you know, could be a lot to go into, we felt that we were abandoned at a young age. And we took that feeling as something that then became a component of our love addiction. So that abandonment creates a lack of self-esteem, or a lack of self-esteem emanates from that because we feel that we are unloved. And we also develop, ironically, a fear of intimacy. So the thing that we're craving, this intimacy, we're afraid of it. We will run from it. So we actually, as a love addict, we're not addicted to the intimacy at all. We're addicted to the intensity of the connection, not the intimacy, but the intensity. We're addicted to this overwhelming high, just like you would get from any other drug, because it is love addiction. It's a drug. Love is a drug. And we have to be aware of that. So there is a few other components to mention before I go on to the reasons, more reasons why this happens. But what I've established here is that love addiction develops from feeling that we are abandoned, from developing a fear of closeness, of intimacy, because of that feeling of abandonment. We fear rejection because of that abandonment. You see how none of these behavioral traits can possibly end up in a healthy relationship. They just can't. So, we're not coming from a platform, from a foundation of healthy self-respect in the first place. We're coming from a lack, not a fulfillment. And when we emanate from a lack, we attract disastrous results. We have a desperate need, like a drug addict, who needs to get the next high. We have this desperation to get the next love addiction high. And, you know, it's like we can't sleep until we get to the next high. I started thinking about, as I was researching love addiction, I started thinking about all the songs. I just got all these songs that just popped up in my head that, although I may not remember the names of any of them, I was just thinking of lyrics out of songs and thinking, wow, these songs are written by people who have, a lot of these songs have an unhealthy relationship behavior. And you know, that's, as we know from looking at the backgrounds of a lot of artists and that they are often tormented, and which is why they sometimes create such amazing artistic pieces, because there is such a strong component of emotion that they express in their songs and in their art and so forth. So that's going down a different track. So a love addict is quite simply addicted to falling in love. Needs to get that high, feels like everything is absolutely, you know, as perfect as it can be at that point, but then it just deteriorates and doesn't actually last very long these days. It tends to last only, from what I've seen on following other people on social media, it tends to only last, you know, maybe 6 months maximum. And then they go through the period of mourning, and then they have to go through the next period of trying to refeed the addiction. So anyway, what I want to ask you is, why do you think that is such a strong thing? We know where it stems from. It stems from feeling of abandonment, a feeling of lack of self-worth that comes from a feeling of abandonment. And we know that it becomes such a strong behavioural component that it feels like it is in essence part of us. So we've sort of established all of that. But let's get in the shade here for a second. The question has to be, what is behind it on a deeper level? Because I'm always, you know, concerned about getting in the deeper level, getting into the stuff that really matters, rather than just scratching the surface and talking about the behavioural characteristics. So on a deeper level, I always go back to looking at things from the deepest level there is, which is from a spiritual level. So as good as it is to study things psychologically, scientifically, without also looking at it spiritually, then you're not going to get all the answers. You're going to get some understandings of why something's happening, but you're not going to dig that hole deep enough to get the understandings, the real reasons, the motivations behind them. So from a spiritual perspective, this intense desire, this neediness, this craving, this love addiction is so overwhelming for so many of us, because it comes from a good place, which is a wonderful thing to know, that it comes from a natural, loving relationship on a spiritual level. That's where it emanates from. We make the mistake, and I often talk about this in my live streams. Gail says, everything you're saying is so true. Thank you, Gail. Thank you for being able to resonate with it. We often make the mistake of looking in the wrong place for the solutions to our desires, our wants, our needs. And look, it's understandable. I'm not blaming. This is not a blame situation. So I don't want to say, look, you silly idiot, you should have known better. We're all here learning. We're all on this journey, or at different aspects of the journey. And the one thing we can do, and I hope to be able to do, is take some of my pain and convert it into a little bit of help for you through my learning, through my self-searching, through the things I've gone through, the stuff that I went through when I was younger, and the decades of trying to figure out what the hell's going on, what is life about, why is there so much emotional distress. Sort of a bit of a follow-on from yesterday's live stream about the struggle of life in a more material sort of way that was. So if I can take some of what I've learnt and share some of that wisdom with you, maybe then you can pay it forward and share it with someone else. So we have a inbuilt natural desire to be loved. And when we're removed from it, when we're not feeling connected to it, we are intensely out of sorts. We're like somebody our hunger is just becoming, overwhelming, because we're not being fed, we're not being nourished. And we need that love nourishment. So if you go, if depending on your level of willpower, if you go a few days without food, you may be fine. You may be somebody that can fast for weeks and weeks and weeks, because you've trained yourself to be able to do it. But you still need to get back to feeding your body. And thank you for that beautiful comment there, Gail. The wisdom, you say my wisdom is awesome. It's not mine. It's universal wisdom, and all of us can just tap into it. To get to the point of tapping into it can take a hell of a lot of lessons and a hell of a lot of pain. So it hasn't always been this way for me, I can tell you. It's been a lot of questioning anyway, and I have so far to go, because I will put a disclaimer here. I personally am hopeless at romantic relationships, but I'm aware of it. And let's just see if this car will go. And come on. All right. And just because I can talk about it doesn't mean that I'm actually any good at the practical side of it. So, but theoretically I can understand it and the lessons involved. So, yeah, but from a practical point of view, I have so far to go. It's ridiculous. So anyway, with that in mind, can I go across here? I think I can. So what was I going to say? Okay, so I really have lost track a little bit there, haven't I? Really actually don't know what I was going to... So we have, now talking about nourishment, we have this intense need for nourishment, just intense. And sadly, for some of us, this comes across as this love addiction. And it's an honest mistake. We're trying to fulfill this need, but we're just looking in the wrong place. So without laboring on too long on this point in this video, let me start winding up by saying I think when it comes to love addiction, it's really important to recognize it in ourselves if we think that's what it is. Seek professional help if we feel that we are struggling with it. And, you can research it and look at it through, you can look at many different, you can read stuff online, you can listen to YouTube videos from experts. You don't have to go and pay hundreds of dollars an hour so that someone analyzes you. So Gail says, how can you be such a hopeless romantic? You're such a lovely guy. Stay safe on that bike. Thanks, Gail. That's a beautiful comment. Well, we each, there's a lot behind that question. We each have our lessons and our areas in life that we have to deal with, and I have mine. Anyway, so, look at whether you think this is something that you could benefit knowing more about, whether it'll help your relationships, romantically or your friendships, and, be aware of the foundations, the origins. Be aware of where you're coming from when you're connecting with people and how that may be sabotaging your connections because of what you're looking for. And be aware that romantically, what we are searching for is actually that true divine connection, that connection with our true divine mother and father that we mistakenly thought was our earth mother and father here, on the planet, but our divine mother and father, the ones who love us unconditionally. And I always like talking about this because it's such a beautiful thought to meditate upon, to take shelter in and comfort in, is the understanding that the divinity we come from, we are a child of the universe, and the divinity we come from is that we are loved unconditionally, always, no matter what we say or do, no matter all the mistakes we've made, no matter how far along the learning path we are or aren't, that true love is our spiritual parents love us unconditionally, and we are held in a state of love all the time, and we can turn within and connect with that at any time. So that's a very comforting thought to finish this morning's live stream on. So on this magic spring Sunday, I hope you have a great day. I hope you live vegan and save lives, and I'll speak with you soon. Ahimsa.